CBS News correspondents Major Garrett and Nancy Cordes are in Washington joining us now. Major, so many calls for Trump to release his tax returns. We're finally getting at least this glimpse into his finances. As far as Trump supporters go, how much of an impact will this have on them?
You know, for many months, Trump has told his supporters when this issue has come up, he's tried to avoid taxes all of his life, trying to starve the government. That's usually a pretty reliable applause line. I think the biggest problem for Trump, if there is one, in this very slender look into his mid-1990s finances is he was a terrible businessman. And I think that is probably the most damaging aspect of all of this, because one of the things I routinely hear almost in the second or maybe first phrase from Trump supporters, why they believe in him, why they want him to be president of the United States, is he's a great businessman. He can turn the country around. He can save or preserve or help my economic future. Well, this reveals that Trump was not the great businessman that he says he was in the mid-1990s. He made a ton of miscalculations, lost a ton of money, and then used those losses to shield himself from federal tax liability for years going forward. Not an uncommon legal maneuver for those who were wealthy enough to exercise it. But Trump was a terrible businessman in the 1990s. He then became a great self-promoter and reality TV star after that. But when he talks about himself as this great businessman, developer, and success story, that really ends in the mid-90s or even before that, kind of a good real estate developer in the 80s. But if this is going to have an impact on Trump, I'm not sure the tax aspect of it is going to be as revealing or damaging. It will be that he just wasn't that great a businessman.
Well, Nancy, the Clinton campaign certainly could seize on that. What has their reaction been?
Well, they're not focusing as much on how much he paid in taxes because the reality is we still don't know. We know what those tax records imply, but we just don't have his tax returns from the past 20 years to be able to verify that he paid no taxes. What they're focusing on is what Major was just discussing, which is the fact that this vaunted businessman may not have been all that he may have lost nearly $1 billion in 1 year alone. So that's the argument that they're making. That's the argument you'll hear from Hillary Clinton today. And they're also going to be arguing that, while he was able to turn that most likely to his advantage, there were any number of workers, shareholders who got stiffed when his investments failed, even as he seemed to recover beautifully.
Major, you were talking about this idea of a terrible businessman, but certainly Trump surrogates have touted him as a genius and a smart businessman tax-wise, and you did touch on this. So can the Trump campaign actually turn this to their advantage?
Well, I don't think they can turn it to the advantage, but sometimes in politics, when you're in a tough situation, you want to fight it to a draw. And that's, I think, the tactical response from the Trump campaign. Just assert that Trump was wise and adroit about using the tax code, and I guarantee you, and there's already been one story about this, Hillary Clinton and her husband Bill used net operating losses on their tax returns to shield themselves from future tax liabilities as well. And I remember when Bill Clinton was president of the United States, one of his tax returns said that they had deducted the value of hand-me-down underwear donated to a shelter to lower their tax obligations. So everyone uses, or many people use, the tax code to their advantage for obvious reasons, to preserve their wealth and keep it from Uncle Sam. Donald Trump is not altogether that different in that category, but the level and magnitude of using it did even bother, according to the New York Times, Trump's accountant, who saw him accumulating all of these losses and the downstream negative effects that Nancy referred to, shareholders, other subcontractors, and others not seeing money that was due them, and yet Trump continuing to build and live a lavish and wealthy lifestyle through these losses and the tax implications thereof. That's all complicated. I think the Trump campaign would be more than satisfied if by saying genius, genius, genius for the next 3 days, they fight this to a draw.
Yeah, any chance that they then release his tax returns because of what we've seen already?
I don't think so. I think this is, first of all, the tax implications of this on the legal side do favor Trump. He can say, hey, wait a minute, somebody leaked this to you. It's published against federal law. I'm going to sue the New York Times and make a cause celeb or a mini one out of that. And as Rudy Giuliani, one of the Trump surrogates, said, hey, all this fascination reinforces Trump's decision not to release his tax returns and be reluctant to do so. So if anything, I think this enlarges the palace guard around the Trump tax returns, not diminishes it.
And Nancy, we know that we are going to see Hillary Clinton giving an economic speech today in Toledo, Ohio, on the heels of a top Trump advisor, Rudy Giuliani, saying Trump would be better for the U.S. than a woman. What type of attack on Trump can we expect to see out there today?
I think you'll hear her bring up his taxes, bring up his operating losses, and it'll be short and sweet because that's the typical strategy of the Clinton campaign when going after Donald Trump. Come up with something pithy, make it quick, make sure that there's one or two sound bites that everybody latches onto, and then move on to something else. And the broader theme of the day today, we're told, is going to be about businesses, profit sharing, making sure that the way that businesses works for the employees as well, and that they aren't solely doing things like the maker of the EpiPen, for example, they argue, that benefit the company but not the wider population. So she's going to be talking about Mylan. She's going to be talking about Wells Fargo and the recent controversy surrounding that company. And in that context, she's going to be talking about the Trump Organization as well.
She got a big endorsement from LeBron James, who obviously is the native son of Ohio, but really has a draw beyond that. How is the campaign viewing this endorsement that they've gotten?
Well, they've sent out about 10 or 60 or 160 tweets already about it in the past 12 hours. It's safe to say that they're fairly thrilled with this because he is, as you point out, a native son in the mother of all battleground states, Ohio. Doesn't hurt that he just took the Cavaliers to a championship. So they're pretty thrilled in a state like Ohio, which is not only the biggest battleground state, but also most likely the toughest for Hillary Clinton because it has a larger population of white working class voters, not as many of the minorities, college educated voters that tend to help her in the polls. This is a pretty big boost.
Yeah, sports world really does have an impact beyond sports itself. Major Garrett and Nancy Cordes in Washington, thank you very much.
You're welcome.